incredible look into Hideo's career. Did you guys enjoy the film? But I know this has been a long journey for you bringing this to the screen, and this was the first time any audience in the world has seen this. It truly was the world premiere. Glen, let me first ask you about the title of the film, Connecting Worlds. I think that's something you came up with, correct me if I'm wrong, but
yes.
Why did you decide to name it Connecting Worlds?
It's just listening to Hideo talk about what influenced him when in his younger years and how technology could be used to connect on a human level with people and as a force for good. And then Death Stranding coming out and talking about fractured society and reconnecting people, it just felt quite natural to align with the theme.
And Hideo, I think your career has really been about connecting with an audience, but also I think connecting different mediums together. And I know you've said, and I think it's even in your Twitter bio, that 70% of your body is made up of movies. So now a movie about you is somehow part of that 70%, and it's all kind of collapsing back on itself. Why has it been so important for you to kind of blend these mediums together and blurring sort of the idea of what is cinema, what is game, and connecting the different entertainment mediums together?
僕が子供の時もゲームはなかったんですよ。なんで映画ばっかり
When I was a
見
child,
てましたし。
there was no games. I was just watching movies all the time.
で、映画とゲームは別物だと言われてたんですけど、デジタルで一つになりました。
It was all different. Movies and games are all different. But now it's all connected by digital.
で、最近映画監督の方とか俳優の方に会うと、ちょっとびっくりするんですけど、皆さん、僕は映画を見てゲームを作ってるんですけど、皆さん若者たちは映画というよりゲームをずっとプレイしてきてるんですよね。でゲームをプレイしてきた人が映画を作ったり小説を書いたり俳優になっている、そこに気がついたので、映画もゲームも別物じゃないと、もうこれを一つにしようということで、グレンとも相談して今回こういう映画の上映が実現したということです。
So I was talking with Glen about this movie, but I was very surprised to see recently that every time I meet directors or actors, young people, I grew up watching films and became a game creator, but for them, they became directors growing up playing games. And I then realized, it's kind of that right now. That's why I talked with Glen and said, hey, we should do something together because everyone is really naturally connected already.
Glen, I wanted to ask you about this idea of even doing a film about Hideo as a subject. I mean, I've known him for many decades and been a huge fan of his work, as many in the audience have been. Why did you want to make a movie about Hideo, a documentary about his story?
I think there's a game called Metal Gear Solid. I don't know if anyone's heard of this. It had an influence on me at school as much as any film. And it was the first game that I ever played where people would go to each other's houses just to watch each other play a game. It didn't matter if you didn't play, you just wanted to know what's happening in the story and what you had to figure out next. And when the opportunity came up to work with Hideo, it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's going to be insightful and lead you down all kinds of avenues of creativity and inspiration. So it's a no-brainer.
僕はグレンと音楽の趣味がほぼ一緒で、
Well, Glen and I have really common
グレンと仕事するとき
music.
CD と LP をくれるんです。
So every time we meet, Glen gives me a lot of CDs.
今日くれなかったんですけど
He didn't give me one today,
こ
actually.
れ冗談ですけど
But anyways, he gives me all the time.
Always a disappointment.
Well, what I love about the film too is that we really got to step into the creative process of Hideo. I mean, I've written stories and visited his studio before, but I love that you had cameras really in the room, and I think we got a sense of how Hideo leads and directs the team, and it was great to see him playing the game and commenting. I'm curious, for you having been around a lot of filmmakers and game makers, how would you sort of, what was interesting to you about Hideo's creative process, about how he leads this team? Because it's always, you have the auteur, but a lot of it is how they enroll others in their vision, right? And how they bring them along. And I thought it was really insightful to see some of that. I was curious what your takeaway is of sort of how Hideo's able to, lead his team.
I think the thing that struck me was the amount of detail. If we're making a film that's purely a making of Death Stranding, I think it would be 10 hours long. The meetings that I filmed, you get into the edit and you look at transcripts and you think, they're just talking about one element for 2 hours. So I think that the speed of I made a documentary with Gareth Edwards about Rogue One, and a lot of those decisions are fast. But I think there's much more detail, and maybe that's to do with games being made over a bit of a longer period sometimes in terms of development. I think the detail and the attention to it, and just the thought of every single aspect is quite interesting.
Hideo, how has directing a game changed for you? You talked, in the film about 1986 making your first games. Now you have much larger teams, larger budgets, big production value. And curious, how has directing a game changed for you? Is it harder to make games today? Is it harder to lead a team?
ちょっと難しいんですけど、僕らが入った時は、ほとんど注目されてませんでした。
Yeah, well, it's difficult to explain, but when I started creating,
映画でもありましたけど、周りから反対されましたし、
and as I said in the video, it's
なんですごく自由でした。
everyone said
で
don't
も
do it,
ハード
so
ル
I
ス
could
ペ
do
ックがすごく
anything.
低かったので、
The specs of the
もうこん
hardware
なもんですね。
was very low,
た
so
だ
I
そ
could
れでも5、
express
6 人
this.
で1本のゲームを作ってたの
You
で、
know, I couldn't express
ほぼ
anything,
何から何までやらないといけない。
and I had to do everything from scratch.
今はその逆で、
But now it's
ハード
vice
スペック
versa.
が高くなって、
The hard
あらゆる
specs
方
are
向に、全方向に、
You could do any
作業しないといけなくなって、
and you have to watch for
まあ
everything.
うちは100人ちょっとでしたけど、
Right now,
普通は規模のゲームは600人とか
people
1000
in
人
our
で作る
studio,
ので、
but usually that
工場ですよね。
game is
だから結局
made with
一部分しかや
600
ってな
people.
い。
It's almost like a factory.
なんでまあ一定数の人は違うと思うんですけ
But
ど、
us, it's different.
いわゆるビッグバジェットの映画を撮る
Same
よう
with
なものなんで
indies
そ
movies
こ
too.
は大きく変わりまし
You
た。
have to fight with the big budget movies. So that has changed like that these days of creating games.
Glen mentioned how much Metal Gear inspired him, inspired many of us in the audience today, I'm sure. I'm curious for you though, Mr. Kojima, when you look back at your career, this is one of these things where it's a documentary on your career, it's very much a career that is still ongoing and many things still to come, but so far in your career, I'm curious, when did you first feel successful, like you had connected with an audience and really, were proud of the work that you were creating? Did it start right back in, the late 80s, or was it Metal Gear Solid, or do you remember a certain moment for you when you were, proud that you felt that you had reached an audience and connected with them?
まだないとか
I don't feel that
い
now.
やいや冗談です
Just kidding.
毎回、これが最後という気持ちで作ってます。だから、一番最近のゲームが一番誇りに思いますけど、
So every time I release a game, I feel that this is my last. So every game that I release, I feel proud.
ゲームのタイトルではないんですけど、大体僕らが業界に入った時は30で終わりと。ゲーム作りは過酷なんで、体力と知力がいるので、
It's
20
really
代しか無理と。
difficult to create a game. It was said that in your 30s you're done. You need more power. You have to create games within your 20s was what it was always said.
で大体、30代になるとマネージメントに移ります。
And you go on to like management after you release a game in the 30s. And then the 40s you control the studio or something.
なんで現場を離れるんですけど、
Member of the board and you
僕は
don't
もうずっ
create
と
it.
現場が好きなので、
But I didn't do that. I wanted to be
何をしたかというと
at the
ですね、
spot
現場に残るためにプ
So-
ロデューサーになって、
in order to
プロデュー
stay.
サーをやるために役員になったと。
I became producer.
で今はもっと自由にゲームを作
To
るため
be
に独立し
producer,
た。
I became member of the board. So right now I'm more free
僕
with
の
my
中で今
studio.
も現役でやってるってことが一番
So
楽しいというか、
what I'm having fun is that I'm still
余命何年か知りませんけど、
in that moment in
残
the
り時間
studio.
ゲーム作りに、頑張りたいと。
Maybe I don't have so much time to live, but I want to keep doing it as long as I live.
We want you to keep doing it too. The film, you talked about kind of connecting with audiences and how you try to blend sort of an art house sensibility, but with something that has mass appeal. I'm curious, have there been games or certain projects in your career where you feel like you didn't connect with an audience, or you were disappointed with sort of the idea didn't translate? I'm curious for you, when you look back over the past 30 years, is there a certain project or game that you feel like maybe didn't reach the success that you wanted to, or deliver the message you wanted?
毎回それはありますね。
Every time, actually.
まあメタルもそうですけど、
Even Metal Gear.
評価された10年ぐらい経ってからです。
It was only 10 years after when the original was released that it was evaluated highly.
僕隊の時も
Even Boktai.
ゲームを外でするっていうのはだいぶ怒られたんです
At
け
the
ど、
game, they
あれは
were,
5年ぐらいして
a lot of people were unhappy of how I used it, but
デ
you
スス
know,
トも配達
only
ゲー
5
ムなん
years
て面
after
白
it
くな
got
い
successful.
ウォーキングシミュレーターだと言われ
And
たん
Death
ですけど、
Stranding too.
まあようやく
Everyone
5
said it
年
was
ぐらい
a
経
walking
って評価され
simulator.
た。
And now, recently,
なんでまあそこは全然気にしてません。
evaluated as high, Death Stranding. So I don't really care about the initial reactions, to be honest.
まあ今は自分の会社なんですけど、以前の会社とかも聞いて、多くの人に反対される方が成功してるっていう経
I
験がある。
believe that if I have opposing ideas from everyone, that will lead to more success.
まあそれを指標に企画を出すというか。
So I kind of think about that when I bring new ideas on the table.
There were some great folks in the documentary film that you got to interview, Glen. And the thing I find when you talk to anyone in the entertainment world, they're just so excited to talk about it. They were really inspired by him. I mean, I had Nicolas Cage on stage a few weeks ago, and he's like, "I'm going to Tokyo." It's like, I gotta go meet with Hideo, and it's like shows up a few days ago at the studio. He was so excited to meet with you. Glen, when you were talking to these interview subjects, I'm curious, was there any common themes that came to you about sort of their opinion or perspective on Hideo? It seems like pretty easy to get a lot of really amazing people talking about him that really his work inspires them.
Yeah, a lot of people want to talk about the storytelling and Hideo's storytelling and the cinematic nature of how he moves people in his games, but it's interesting because it's sort of, I wanted to speak to people more about video games as an art form as well, and it just lent itself to speak for them to speak about Hideo in that respect, because it was been across everything, and how games should be looked at in that light compared to films and any other art forms. So it was quite easy for them to speak about Hideo in that respect, in terms of what we wanted our takeout to be about how games can transport us on a human level like that. But no, it was kind of easy for them to speak about Hideo though. I didn't have to convert anyone.
And it was a great, group of folks that Hideo, considers friends, but also I think his work inspires them. Now, Hideo, that we have a film kind of talking about your career, and we know how much you love movies, I think we're at an interesting point in the gaming industry where we're seeing some game creators cross over to do, series or movies or a lot more adaptations of games. And I'm curious to get your perspective. You've really focused your whole career on making games. What are your aspirations in terms of making, directing a film or being involved in a series? Is that something that's exciting to you, or do you feel like your talents are best used staying in purely the gaming medium?
まあ僕は映画は特別なんですよ。
Well, for me, movie is
で
special.
特別すぎてですね。
And it's so special, I can't do it.
本来完璧主義者なんですね。
I'm a perfectionist.
でゲームはどんだけ完璧に作っても、ユーザーの皆さんが、完成するもの。
No matter how much I make it perfect, it doesn't end
映画2時間
until
自分で編集しま
people
す。
play it.
ミックスもするので、で
Movie
も上がらないです
is
ね。
2 hours, and I have to mix and everything. So I think I will never finish making it if I start making a movie.
ずーっとやってると思い
I'll
ま
be doing it all day.
す。で、独立してからすごい映画の監督をしてくれとか、
So
脚本書いて
after
くれって
being
オファーが
independent, I've got a lot of offers from all over the world to direct a movie
すごいいい条件とかもあるんだけ
and
ど、
great conditions, to be honest.
コジプロのスタジオを作ったの
But since I made Kojima Productions, I have staffs.
映画を撮るならば1年ぐらいちょっと
And if I were to
ゲーム
film
作り休憩しないといけない
and
ので
direct a movie, I have to get out of the studio for about a year, and I can't do that and leave my
6
stand.
年7年
So 6-7 years since my studio.
結構悩みながらゲーム作りをしてたんですよ
I've kind of thought about
映画は作りたかったので
I wanted to direct movies too.
で、今デスト2も作ってますし、オイトも作ってますし、次の仕込みもしてます。
And I'm also doing on a new one.
映画化の話もあって
And also Death
なんです
Stranding
け
in
ど
a movie too. I'm
ちょっ
working
と
on
僕
that.
今年60
But I'm being
1
60
ヶ月後で60です
this year. I'll be 60.
結構生きてるでしょ
See, I'm a little old, right?
で、ちょっと考えましたあと10
And I
年ぐ
thought
らい
about it. I have like
まあ
what?
映画を
10
作りたい
years?
けど
I want
ゲ
to
ームも
direct
作
a
りたい
film, but I want to
で
make
デントロがこの間東京に来まして
Guillermo del Toro came to Tokyo and
でちょ
visited
っと
me.
相談してみました
And I asked him.
で彼も同じようなことを言ってて残りの人生あとどうするかっていうよ
He
く
was
2人で
thinking,
話し合ってたんです
what should we do in our remaining lives?
僕は今ゲームこういう状況で作っ
And I
て
said,
ます
I'm doing these games,
で
and
映画
these
もやるとオ
projects,
ファーもある
and
け
doing
ど
movies,
オファーを受けるとスタジオが潰れる
offers. But if I do it,
どうしたらいいの
the studio might not be
するとデントロが
allowed. So
ヒデオが作ってるのは映画だと
Hideo,
だから今のまま
you're already making a movie more. Just keep doing what you're doing.
そういうことかと思って
And I thought,
ちょっと
oh,
こう気持ちが楽
I got it. And I felt much
ゲームを
better.
作りますだと
So I thought, okay, I'll be doing
だから
whatever
ゲームとか映画とかじゃなくて皆さんのために
about
なんか
games
喜ばれる
or
ものを作り
movies.
たい
I want to make something that makes the people here happy.
And I think we're seeing this growing extremes between, what is a game, what is a movie. I thought Glen, you showed a lot of incredible performance capture there with incredible actors working with Hideo and using kind of gaming technology to tell stories. And I mean, some of the cutscenes and performances, looks like a movie now. As you being someone kind of coming from the traditional entertainment industry into the gaming industry, what's your impression of kind of where games are now as a medium and where they're going to go? I mean, you see someone like Hideo, what he's doing, it feels like that is going to blur into interactive movies that happen to be made with gaming technology. I'm curious, where do you think the gaming medium is going to go moving forward?
God, that's a really hard question. I would say
Talk about like Unreal Engine being used for sets and things like that.
Yeah.
Are these worlds going to come together?
No, I understand that. I mean, I would say it's interesting because when we interviewed Nicholas, who he almost spoke about, we didn't have it in it, but he spoke about being almost jealous of the freedom within game design and that some of the limitations now for commissions for films and feature films. And I do wonder, and Hideo touched on this before, that people growing up that are influenced by Metal Gear Solid, by games, who will then go into movie making. And I mean, very interesting to see that. I mean, I found it interesting when Guillermo del Toro spoke about the freedom that's different than Western disciplines. And I would say that, I don't know if this answers probably doesn't answer your question, but I think it's really interesting that the next generation of filmmakers coming through are influenced by those video games. And I'd say that maybe people are afforded more freedom in games. Certainly there's an interesting crossover there.
Well, and even how Hideo can reposition a shot and sort of change things and whatnot. It seems a very powerful medium to tell stories. We know, and Hideo, your games always, as you mentioned, have a deep meaning or message to them. I think that's why many of us appreciate them, is they're not just about the twitch. It's really about the story and the idea of connection, as we know, which is a theme of the film, but also a theme of Death Stranding. You've said recently that I think even when you were on stage with me at Game Awards, you said even Death Stranding 2, you kind of had to rewrite it all after sort of going through the pandemic. And not that you're I'm sure going to give away much today, but I'm curious for you, when you think of the themes of your games, where is your mind at right now in terms of what you want to communicate to audiences about it was about family, it was about war, it was about connection. Where's your mind right now?
それはちょっと言えないですね。
I can't say that, Jeff.
ジェフはうまいんですよ、いつも。
Jeff is always good to try to pull all these stories from me.
当然僕人間なんで、
I'm a
皆さんと一緒ですよ。
Same as you guys.
未来人でも預言者でもない。
I'm not a prophet, you know, I don't see the future.
皆さんと同じ世界で生きてます。だから、
Living just like you.
今の社会問題とか、将来の不安とか、
I see the news and I'm
喜び
writing
と不安の
about
中でのゲ
future.
ーム作り。
I'm happy, but I always absorb that into my game.
ただテーマではないんですけど、やっ
Not
ぱ
a theme,
り言わないものを作りたい。
but I want to create something that's not out there yet.
もうすでにあるものを作るのであれば僕じゃなくて
It doesn't have to be me if I had
や
to
っぱり
create something that's
僕し
already
か
out
できな
there.
いようなものをなるべく作
I want
っ
to do
て
something that no one has
刺
done,
激したいと。
and I want to stimulate everyone.
後の表現でできればいいと。
And as long as I live a short lifespan, maybe, but I will
さっき
always
の話ですけど、ゲームと映画はもうバラバラでしたけど、
See,
デジタルになって、
movie and games were different, but now it's
間が埋まって
closer.
き
It's
てると思う
visual.
ので、
It's all the
映
in-betweens
画
are
のようなゲ
building
ームとかゲームのような映画とかも
movie like games or
た
game
だ
like
今日
movies.
ここでトライベッカで映画祭ですよ、ここ。
Tribeca, this is a
ゲ
film
ームを
festival.
作ってる59歳のおっさん
A
を
59-old guy creating a game,
ドキュメンタリーをここでやるっていうのは
having a documentary at
結構すごいこ
Tribeca.
とだと思うんですけ
Isn't
ど、
that something?
こういうことが
And
かなり
this is what I
起こ
want
ってく
to
る
do.
と。だからゲームだからどうの、
You
映
see my
画だからどうのっていう
It's
のは
not
皆
like
さんの中では
it's
な
a
いと思いま
game
す。
or it's a movie or whatever. It doesn't really matter to the people anymore.
和食食べるとか洋食食べるとか中華食べるとかそんな感じですね。ご飯なんで。
Don't care about you eat Japanese food or Western food or Chinese food. You know, food is food, and everyone likes all kinds of food. It's similar to that.
I think that's a great point. And Tribeca has been progressive in sort of seeing the the gaming medium as a valid creative field. Part of the thing we do at the Game Awards is trying to really celebrate this art form and elevate it. And you said we're seeing big name actors in your games involved in this, and I think there's only going to be more of that moving forward. You've talked a few times though about being 60 years of age, and we hope you have many, many more productions ahead of you. Is there anything that you've yet to accomplish in your career that you want to do? It seems like you're saying, I'm not going to go off and direct a movie. I'm going to stay focused on games or, interactive.
ゲームインタラクティブ。はい。ゲームですね。
Just about games or anything?
Yeah, just in life. Yeah. Is there anything?
僕は宇宙に行きたい人なんで、
I
ちょっと
want
古い
to
人なんで、
go to outer space, right?
宇宙に行って遊べるゲームを作りたいんですよ。無重量で。
I want to go to outer
宇宙に
space
行って今のゲームはなかなか遊べ
and
ない。
create a game that you could play in space.
逆
Because right now all games you can't probably play in outer space, but I want to
ゲー
create
ムを作
something.
りますんで、誰か連れてってください。
So someone please send me up to space.
That would be a
I would be happy to make that documentary.
You had said also recently, I think it was last year today, AI everyone's talking about, and I think there was a quote where you sort of said you were going to create an AI of yourself so you could live on forever and continue to create games which got a lot of attention. I'm curious with all that's going on around, kind of AI and generative technologies, how much do you think about that? How do you think it's going to impact your ability to kind of create? Is it going to help you? Is your team already thinking about that? I'm not just thinking about the AI of the characters, but sort of in terms of script and art and things like that. I'm curious to get your take on that.
いや乗っ取られないというか AI に命令しますからこっちが。
So I don't think AI would take over.
で言うこと聞かない AI は聞きますか
I
ら、
will
ね。
kind of order AI to do something, and if they don't listen, I'll just cut that AI.
人間が上です。
Because humans should be above it.
ただでも日常に AI がどんどん入ってきますので、
But AI would come into our
AI を
lives.
使うなっていうのは僕的には違うと思うんで。
So it's not like don't use
使
the
い方だ
AI.
と思います。
It's really up to how you use the
例え
AI.
ば今トリプル A の
So for instance,
フルゲームって
あ
600人ぐらいで4年ぐら
triple
いで
A
出ますよ
title
ね。
takes about 4
このう
years.
ちの300
600
人 AI にしたらもっと早くできると思う。
If you change it to 300
なんで
with AI,
オペレーターはいいと
maybe
こだけ
it'll
取ると。
be faster. But the creator has to order
時
what
間がかかるところは AI にやってもらうという。
something that's time consuming, AI
だ
can
から
do.
ワクワクすると思うんですよだから。
But I think it's really exciting future ahead.
AI を観客に僕はしますから、ゲーマーに、プレイヤーにしますんで、
And I
もっと売れる。
will make the
AI にゲームや
AI
らすんで。
a gamer too, so that they will kind of help me elevate more,
これ笑うとこなんですけど、全然笑
We're
う。
supposed to laugh, sorry.
It's scary, but we should be laughing. Well, Glen, ultimately, it's a beautiful film. I'm sure people around the world will get a chance to experience it hopefully soon. To wrap this up, I'm curious, what do you hope people take away from this film? I mean, obviously it's a great study of Hideo as a creator, and I thought it was really insightful to sort of see his creative process, really for the first time, and have him talking about his parents growing up. I mean, even knowing him as well as I do, I've learned new things about Hideo in this. But what do you hope this sort of general audience takes away from this film?
I think in terms of Hideo's process, just the amount of the depth of thought that goes into his work, it just shows that they don't just ball straight into making something. Everything comes and is stimulated from an idea, and that's something that he'll wrestle with and think about, and that's what we try to do with our film, is just to bounce out of the present day into influence growing up and how that ended all amalgamating into Death Stranding. And just again, just as a takeout, just as video games is a very legitimate art form and storytelling medium that is here to stay.
And Hideo, for you having gone through this process of this documentary, and I know I've written making of stories on your games, even back to Metal Gear 2. You've done a lot of documentaries on your films, but I think this is a more personal take. It always, when you're subject to one of these things, I think you always you have to trust the director, but also curious about how it's going to turn out. I'm curious, what are your impressions of the film and what you hope the audience takes away from it?
感動的なことを言うべき場なんですけど、
Yeah, there's not so much
間違いを正したいので、
moving moment.
アニメのシーンがあります。
So look, I want to say some
僕、東京生まれ
faults.
で大阪で
Anime part.
育ちましたけど、
I grew up in Osaka for
ス
sure,
ーテキ
yes.
というタワーがありま
But
し
did
た。あ
you
れ
see the
南の方にある
Suitenka.
建物で、僕は
It's in
北
the
の方
south.
に住んでたので、
I live in the north
あれ
of
は間違いない。
Osaka. So I haven't grown up in that area specifically according to that anime. I don't want to say that.
非常に
Look, creative freedom.
But, overall it was great, of
楽
course.
しみました。
Yeah.
皆さんそうですけど、自分の人生を振り返るってなかなかないと思うんですよね。
Yeah, same with everyone.
子供の頃と
You
か、
don't have so much
ちょっと前の仕事で疲れた時とか、
What you did when you were a child and stuff.
僕もあまり覚えてなかった。
Same with me. I didn't remember
今日見
my
て、
past, but when I
いろいろ
look
思い
today,
出して、
I kind of had memories.
生まれ変わったとは言いませんけど、もう一度、
So
頑張ってみようかなと。
I don't think I say I was
思いました。
born, but I thought,
観客の一人
yes,
として。
I would
ありがとうございます。
stand up and move on again today from today as an audience, one audience. It was so refreshing. So I want to say thank you.
Very awesome looking. Hideo's career and that, I thought very insightful. All his mind works and all of us that are here, appreciate what he's done for the gaming medium, but also how his stories have connected with us emotionally, especially through the pandemic, and I'm sure kind of moving forward. So, last question to you, Hideo. What can we expect from you in the future? Anything? I'm sure not that you're announcing anything, but can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect from you and Kojima Productions moving forward?
DS2 頑張ってます。
Well, I'm doing
結構い
DS2.
けてると思うんですけど。
I think it's
で
turning
もう
out
一
very
個のや
well.
つ、
And I'm doing
もうちょっ
one more.
とすごいんですよ。
A real great one.
でですね、コロナもあって、
And then with
戦争もあって、
Pandemic,
いろいろ考えるところがあって
wars and stuff.
皆さんがいろんな SNS でお便りがあって、
And I get so much feedback on social media too from
ちょっ
fans.
と皆さんの期待に応えたいしたいんで、
And I want to make sure that I
ちょっと今
reply
日本やってますけど、その次は結構
by my works.
気合いに入れた。
And then after that new project, I have another
言えま
project.
せんけど、
I can't say that would return all these voices that I get.
ちょっと
And I can't say details. That's about it, I guess.
3 things happening.
うちのスタッフは2つですよ。僕は3つ。
Yeah, the staff is working on it too. The third one, it's in my head.
Okay.
でスタッフのね、 給料払わないといけない。
Because I need to make sure that, you know, I have all these ideas and lay out so that I can pay all the staffs, you know, they're assured, right? So the studio goes on.
Well,
そ
amazing.
この映画を撮るのはないです。
I'm not thinking of
DS の映画化をやってます。
directing a film. There will be Death
終わってま
Stranding
すけ
in
ど、
a
まあ、
movie,
僕
and
はディレク
I'm
ターはしない
associated.
ので。
But I won't be directing that, but I'll be associated with that movie project too.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you have lots to do in your 60s here. We can't wait to see what you bring us next. Glenn, thank you so much for debuting this film at Tribeca. Mr. Kojima and Aki, thank you coming all the way. Hideo Kojima, everyone.